All right, class. So, what we're going to be doing right now is some typography project overview. And how this is going to work is I'm just going to go through each of your projects and give you guys feedback, and you will implement that feedback. So, you don't have to watch through everyone else's. It's good to see other people's work and also to hear like what kind of feedback they get as well, because it might help your work in the future. But if not, just fast forward to where you see your project and then um, just get all of the feedback from that, and that's what you're going to implement when we have our first revision round. So let's get started. I'm just going to kind of go down the line through grading and get this done for you guys. So we're going to start with Adrian Aguila. And so the first thing that I notice, Adrian, is when I'm looking at this initial scene here, it looks like there's some space here at the sides and at the bottom and top. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure that that solid is the full size of the composition and not too small. So either if you're drawing a shape, make sure that shape is large enough to overextend over your scene, or make sure that you create a new solid by doing the following. Let's go ahead and we'll just bring this in here, and I'll rename this composition test so I can just show you what I mean by that. And that means to just right click, go to new, solid, and you can, we'll just say that's perfect. And then it automatically fills up the entire scene no matter what size you make it, right? We always make ours 1920 by 1080, so it will always size the solid to that proportion. And then you can just lock that and it won't move around for you. And then if you want to change that, if you select the layer and hit Control Alt Y, I'm sorry, Shift Control Y, there we go. Shift Control or Command Y, and then it'll bring up the options to make any changes to like the color or anything if you want to. So you definitely want to do that first. The next thing that you want to do when I play this, everything looks good as far as alignment goes on here. The easing doesn't look bad on the way in, specifically on the good, better, best. On the way out, I think you should just adjust your curves more so it's a little bit more, there's a little more flair, drama to the curves on the way out. Because right now they're kind of all in the same zone as far as like position-wise. And we kind of want them to like how they came in, right? The easing should be similar at the end there. Also, you're missing motion blur, so you want to have that put onto there. For the fade one looks good. The first thing I would do is maybe either move this over this way more to the left and then the E to the right so that they kind of are cut off a little bit there. Or just move them in a little bit. If you come down here, you can find that title action safe. And if you turn that on, you'll want to stay within these bounds if you're going to do that. But I would bump this so it kind of overlaps past the, let me just check something real quick here, past the actual scene. The other thing that I notice is right here, your sentences aren't aligned with the top and bottoms of the word fade, so you want to make sure you align those there. So you can just bring your, if you hit Control R on your keyboard, it will bring up the rulers and you can just click and drag these down like that, and you can delete them if needed by just clicking and dragging them back up. And then you'll want to line that up with the word at the top like so. And then you will want to, let me see here, move your type either down, and you might have to resize it a little bit. But as far as like the animation goes, the animation isn't bad. Also, I would add some motion blur onto that. So let's go ahead and zoom out real quick. Get back into here. I'll move this up, delete it. Let's play. That looks good. You did a good job there. You might have to align. Oh, okay. I see what you did. Looks good there. add motion blur. Everything needs motion blur, right? This is cool. All right, neat. So the only thing that I would do here, only a couple things, is this this section right here specifically, there's not enough space in between the letter and the white where this goes. So I would maybe just make the white square larger, and that way you don't have to mess with any keyframes here. The other thing I would do is maybe bold the text on your name so it's a little bit easier to read, as far as like we want it to be stand out, right? So it's automatically standing out because of the size difference, and it's slightly bolder, but I want to see like a nice bold font there, like a font weight, so that we can really see it stand out. And then adding motion blur, of course. And the other thing is, that looks cool, maybe playing around maybe more with your easing, especially on the names when they came in. Maybe you could like break these up and have them animating kind of like this, like how you have it on a path animating down like that. Would make it cool and a little bit more interesting, but I think the motion blur on that would be nice. And then maybe making the easing a little bit more, with more oomph in it, if that makes sense. Other than that, really good job, Adrian. All right, let's move on to Maggie. Let's delete that one. All right, Maggie. Let's watch yours. Let's play. Nice. Good job on that easing on the way out. That's kind of what I was talking about there, Adrian, if you're still watching. The best kind of when it comes in, it bounces forward and it then eases back into place. And so what's happening there is your curve. So like if you have your keyframe here and your keyframe here, instead of your curve going like this or whatever, here, let me see. Right? What's happening is your curve is going slightly above your keyframe or slightly below your keyframe. I know that looks extreme, but if the curve goes underneath the keyframe, what's going to happen is you're going to have a little bit of what's called overshoot, and then it's going to settle into that that position. And so you want to make sure that the curve on the word best doesn't overshoot on that keyframe there. So you're going to want to just check your curve and maybe adjust it a little bit on the word best. But other than that, as far as like that is good as far as the animation goes. And then you want to add motion blur onto this as well. Again, you guys, if you don't know how to add motion blur, you do it like the following. You will have to turn on the motion blur button so it's activated, and then you make sure that it's clicked on the actual layer here when you have it, like kind of like shying your layers, right? You got to turn it on and then you got to turn it on, two different spots. Let's go back to your video here. Play. This looks great. The fading typography, this looks nice. Motion blur on there, we'll want to. Good job kind of overlapping that. They fade on nice per word and per letter. That looks good. You will also want to just make sure that this lines up, right, with the word fade. So you'll just maybe have to scale your type down a little bit and then move it down slightly. So you'll want to do that on both of these. That looks nice. Adding motion blur. Good color choices. This looks cool. Especially with the negative thing. You could double the size of your name. Make this a little bit bigger. That's what I would do here. You don't really have to change the weight. The font weight can stay the same. I would just make the name larger in size. And then motion blur on everything else. But these look really good. Yeah, really good job, Maggie, overall. Great job. All right, next we have K. So let's play this. Again, so we have some overshoot going on here. So your curves are going over if we look, keyframe, what's happening is your curve is bouncing above your keyframe. So you want to make sure it does not, and that it only stays at the level of the keyframe and not going over like this part right here, right? So you want to make sure on all the good, better, best that you adjust your curves so that they don't do that. You're going to want to change the spacing here between these because you want them to be equal. So all I would do here is maybe move the word good down a little bit. And I think that would be fine. Motion blur, you're going to want to add that on. That looks good. All right, so we just have the one there for you. I will go ahead and I don't see any other additional ones. All right, so you want to get the other two done as well, Kay, so that we can see the other ones. All right, let's go to Sydney. Ooh, nice job on that, Sydney. A slight overshoot. Ooh, first person with motion blur. Good job on there. This looks great. You want to leave fade on just a slight bit longer. Let's see here. Let's watch this first when it comes in. There's just a slight bit of overshoot happening on the word best. And so you want to make sure that you update that. Other than that, this looks really good as far as like the animations coming in, the animations going out, and the motion blur on it. Looks amazing. This looks great. I'm not quite sure why it's so blurry. So you might want to check to make sure that there's nothing weird happening with this one, and you can let me know if you're having an issue with it, and we can talk about it. The only other thing that I see, I would maybe just extend this scene. So like after typography can be faded per word, after these are fully on screen, let it sit for maybe another second or so and then fade off. And I think that would be cool. And then also you want to align your sentences with the top of the word fade and the bottom of the word fade. So you just might want to tap up that first sentence. Just bring that upwards and you'll be fine with that. Good job so far. Nice. Good job on that. The other thing you want to make sure here is that your shape extends, your shape layer extends all the way to the end there. And you might want to make this type the same color just for consistency's sake, because it looks like this is black. You make it the same color as this blue. Try and do that if you can. Try and match it. And I think that'd look more consistent. Nice, good there. And motion blur on these. Motion blur on everything. So even the fade if you can. Motion blur on these. Is it motion blurred? Let me check. No, we want to add motion blur on all of this stuff as well. You could make your name larger. Why don't you do that on this last one? Motion blur as well, and then increase the size of your name, and then make sure it's more centered in this like strip of color here. Other than that, good job. Yeah, motion blur and stuff, that would be great. Good job though, Sydney. All right, let's move on here. How to compose all scenes into one video. Okay, so we've got yeah, let's Ichel, I think I'm saying your name correct. If I'm not, please tell me and we will address that. You know, I want to say your guys' names correctly. So you're having an issue compositing everything into one scene together. So let's first address that, right? So what you want to do is have a main composition here that is at least the length of all of your videos together. And you will take your separate compositions that are up here in your project, and you can drag them into the other composition. And at that point, you can, whichever one is first, let's see what this one is you can, if you move and hold shift when you select a layer, you can even do it with two of them. Let's see what this one is. Holding shift and selecting the layer, moving over. Holding shift, selecting the layers and moving over. And it will snap the end of each layer to the end of the one below it or above it. And so this is how you put them all into one composition. Notice my composition, if I look all the way here to the right of my screen, it just happens to be the perfect length for everything. Sometimes if you're in here and your composition is not the appropriate length, let's trim it so it's not, you're going to notice that all of a sudden it kind of cuts this one off here. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to hit Control K on your keyboard, and that will bring up the main composition that you have all of your pre-comps in, right? And you can come down here to the duration, and you're going to update the duration. So I'm going to probably put in here 28 seconds because that was what it was at before. And then when I do that, you're going to notice that it extends it doesn't really change anything too much when you're looking at it here, but you notice if you come down here at the bottom where you can zoom in or out of your comp, it's now kind of zoomed in a little bit. So I'm going to zoom out all the way. And then now when I look over here, it goes to the end of my layer, but then I just have to make sure I fill this part in the rest of the way on here because it cut it off initially. So I just go like that. And voila, we have them all in one composition, and then you will render this out, right? So let's go ahead and play it here so that we can see. Looks good. We've got a little bit of overshoot here on your on all the words. So that just means, again, keyframe, keyframe. You want the curve to go at the same height. Here, let me do this. You want the curve to be like right here. You don't want it to go up and then or below. You don't want it to be above the keyframe or below the keyframe. You want that curve to be right at the same spot as the keyframe is. So you'll just want to adjust your curves on that. And then what I would do is kind of tighten the space in between these because they're it's a little bit too far apart. But I do believe you have motion blur on it, which looks good. And the animation in general looks good minus the nice, really good job on that. Minus the overshoot. That was it on that one. As far as fade goes, this looks really good. Just a couple things. Add the motion blur to it, and then make sure you might have to change the size of your type. I know the whole thing was like half the size, right? But right now we're looking at wanting to line things up with the word fade. So the one thing that I would do is I would change the size of the type of these two sentences. Make sure they're the same because this font weight looks a little bit heavier than this one. And so you want to make sure they're the same font weight. You're going to make them a little bit smaller, and then you're going to line them up here with the line that I have at the top and at the bottom of the words. Other than that, in the motion blur, the animations look good. Nice, good fade on that. Nice, good job on this one. Only thing I would do here is motion blur. You could probably even capitalize your entire name, or you could make this a little bit bigger. This looks great. Did a really good job on that one. This one's cool. Awesome. Even the motion blur that you got on that one looks really good. Nice. I would just maybe adjust the curves of this shape when it comes down, the dark pink, and maybe the lighter pink when it moves over. because right now it kind of looks a little jerky. So just make sure you're looking at your curves on that and then the other one. But other than that, you did a really good job. And now you know how to put them all into one single composition. So that's what you're going to do for the rest of the semester as well. Good job on that, though. I'm happy you still handed them all in. Thank you. All right. Next individual. All right. So we have Tegan. And it looks like we have a couple for Tegan. So let's go ahead and just kind of drag these down here and see what we're working with. Let me move this one over. All right, Tegan, let's see. First one is the fade assignment. Good, better, best right here. Let's swap them around. There we go. All right, first, good, better, best. We've got a lot of movement happening when the actual letters are supposed, or when the words are supposed to be settled in. So we've got a lot of movement here, which means there's maybe some additional keyframes on your timeline. If you want, I can help you look at that, or Belle, who is the tutor for the animation program, she would also be able to help look, but I can always go over this with you. The other thing that I'm noticing is there's no motion blur on it. So again, to turn that motion blur on, you will go turning the switch on here, and then it's like turning the switch on your layer here will turn on any kind of motion blur for that animation. Now, when these animate in, they don't animate in poorly. What I would do is rewatch this section and pay attention to the curves, right? The curves are going to look a lot like, one's going to be kind of more subtle of a curve shape, and then the next one's going to be a little bit more drastic, and then the last one's going to be the most drastic looking curve that you're going to see inside of your curve graph, inside of your graph editor here. And so once you have that, then you're going to be able to see the difference as far as them coming in quickly. The other thing is that then you'll also do that for when they go off screen too, and then just making sure you have that motion blur on. And then right here is where you want to make sure there are no additional keyframes. Now, if there are not additional keyframes, you want to make sure that the value from the last keyframe on when the type comes in to the first keyframe where the type moves off screen is the same value, and there's no change in the graph, right? The graph during that time should be completely flat, because if it's not, there's going to be movement, right? So you'll want to just check that part. Right here on the fade, let's watch this one. So the fade's moving opposite, right? So what you can do is you can cross your keyframes. You're going to want to start with the word fade in the appropriate order here. And then you're going to want to animate outwards from there. I would definitely rewatch this section. You want to make sure that all of the letters are in alignment here as well. So that A needs to kind of come up a little bit more. You want to make sure that they're all on the same line above and below. And same with the type here. You're going to want to make sure that is the same. So what you're going to start with the letters on this side, and then you're going to animate this F. The F is going to animate to the left. The A is going to slightly shift over to the left. the D will probably shift slightly over to the right, and then the E will shift over to the right. And you just want to make sure they all have similar spacing. And then you'll want to add motion blur to that as well. And as far as like the typography sentences go, these ones will pop on once these letters are in place, right? So you just have to move the keyframes over slightly. And once the F settles into place and the E settles into place, then you'll be okay. As far as this goes right here, this is where you want them to be at the end, right? So you're going to want to move the A up so it matches these. And what you can do here is you can just swap the keyframes. So essentially just put where the first, like of the F, right? If we're just looking at the F layer and there are two keyframes, there should be two keyframes on the F as far as position wise goes. This one at the beginning of the composition, you'll move to where the last one is, and the last one when you'll move it to where the first one is. So you're just swapping the keyframe positions. And then you'll just want to make sure you make adjustments so that it's not overlapping on the letters. Other than that, you've done a good job, a good start on these, and then you're missing the two contact information ones. So if you want to get those done and return those in for a bump in, great, I can work with you on that, Tegan. But other than that, good start. Let's see here. I'm going to delete that. All right. Actually, I think this is... Yeah, I need to keep this one. All right, Vanessa, let's go ahead and review yours. Nice pink color. Good, better, best. All right. All right, good start on that. Let's go ahead and look at this coming in. First of all, I would make the word better the same red. It's a little bit jarring that it's a blue, so you want to make sure you have a consistent color palette overall. And then the other thing I would do is make this B right here, make this capital B. And then you should be okay as far as design goes. The other thing that I noticed when these come in, you need the motion blur put on there. And this kind of jerks into place the word better. So you're going to want to look at your curves here because they don't really look like they go from a good easing to a better easing to a best easing. They almost look a little bit too similar. So you want to make sure that you're matching the curves that I did within the assignment here. And then what happens when the text is going off screen is it has to do with your easing as well. So the easing off screen is slowing off too much in the word better. And so you're going to want to make sure you're looking at those curves again as well. And then the fade, the word fade, starts off in the wrong spot. So you need this to just reverse your keyframes, right? So, and they should be all capital letters. You want them to all have capital. As far as the animation of the type goes on the sentences, this looks good. You can maybe make these, you're going to want them to line up with the word fade. So the first thing that I would do is I would make these all capital letters and then make sure that they are, if you hit Control R, you'll get the rulers. Make sure that they all line up with each other. So you'll bring one ruler up, one ruler down, and you will go ahead and make sure all of the word fade matches these lines, and then you will move these sentences up so that they are also at the top and the bottom line, so that the top of this sentence rests right here on this line and the bottom of this sentence rests on this line. There's something odd going on with your E, so I'm not sure what's happening here, but this almost looks like this shape was kind of drawn. You might want to re-watch this lesson to try and figure out what's going on here, but you're going to basically write the word fade. You're going to separate these into their own, you're going to turn them into shapes so they're not text layers, and then you're going to separate them onto their own layer, and then you're going to animate each layer separately. So you'll want to rewatch this part, add motion blur onto it as well, and then you should be fine with that. If I play this, it should fade off screen. So you want to make sure that everything changes opacity, like you have an opacity change happening off screen. As far as you're missing the contact information, seeing that copy's mine. And then this one is, we want to work on this one a little bit because you don't want your text. Notice how right here your text overlaps in this spot right here, and you don't want that to happen. So make sure that however you're animating this, that none of your text overlaps. You're going to want to make sure this is all capital and that you want to stick within the principles of typography here. So you want to make sure that these three are the same size, the same font size, same font weight. And then this one is at least double. And also you want to have it like, it's your name. You want to have Diaz on here. So you want to have your full name, not just Vanessa D. And you want to, it just kind of cuts off here. So you want to extend it starts off black. Then all of a sudden you have a background popping up. So you just need to address this one a little bit more and then copy the one that I did for class and then adding motion blur overall to everything. Yeah, good start though. All right, let's see who's next. Talia. Cool. All right, Talia, let's play yours. Oh. Here we go. Oh, let me go back. Sorry about that. I zoomed in. Oh, gosh darn. Hold on. I'm sorry, Talia. There we go. Nice. Good settling into spot. Just missing motion blur. That's really it. And I think we are... Yeah, just missing... That's the only thing is you're missing motion blur. Other than that, the animations look good. The way they settle in. Nicely done. Really nicely done. Zooming off screen. Nice. Good job with the fade. You can either, I would make the text a little bit bigger here for the word fade and then match it up to, because you want the sentences to match the height of the word fade, right? So, but I think that the word fade can be larger. So what I would actually do is increase the size of the letters of the word fade, maybe adjust the position keyframes and make it so that they line up with the top and the bottom sentence here. And then you'll be good. Adding motion blur as well. That will be helpful. And then you want to make sure that it fades off screen. So animate that off screen. This one isn't bad. You want to animate these. So this one just pops up like this. You want to make sure that you animate this solid layer from moving from the bottom of the screen upwards. So you want this to come down and then, so opposite, you're just going to reverse that animation. All you got to do is flip your keyframes, okay? So the keyframe that starts with that solid, you just want to move that to where the second keyframe is, and the second keyframe you move to where the first one is. And I think you'll be all set with that. And then maybe you could use a little bit of more space in between these, just a hint, not a lot. And then motion blur. Other than that, it was a good start on this one. Good job on the weight, font weight there. This looks cool. Good job on that. Neat. A nice way to have that animate in. This looks interesting. I like this. So this distance between the stuff looks great. Apply that to the previous one. And then this looks really cool here. You can maybe make this a little bit bigger is what I would do. Your name. And then the other thing that I would do is add motion blur. Other than that, you really did a great job on this project. Good job. All right. I'll go next. All right. All right, Rimini. Let's go ahead and look at this one. Nice. Good job on that. Motion blur. That's all you need. Motion blur on that one. You killed it on this one. Really good job. In fact, let me just, yeah, just motion blur. That's it. Really good, strong start. Nice. This looks good too. Just make sure that you align the sentences with the top and bottom here. And then maybe what I would do is just bring in the F and the E just slightly so we can see a hint of the line here and a slight bit more of the E here. So you might want to just tighten those up a little bit. But yeah, that looks really good. Good job on that. Nice. Really good job on this too. Really, you're just missing motion blur overall on everything. There's really not much that you've done here that needs... Ooh, that looks good. Nice. Yeah, motion blur. Let me watch that one again. Line fades on. Nice. Yeah, just really good job overall. Strong start on this. Minimal changes to be made. Good job. Really good job. All right, next we have Jesus. Let's go ahead and play this for you, Jesus. Ooh, good job on that one. Nice. Ooh, and we got motion blur. Killer job. Nice. Add motion blur to this one. This is perfect. Yeah. The only thing I would do here is because it's a little bit tight on in between these two sentences. So I would just change the size, the font size of these, make sure they line up, add blur. That would be it. And before I miss it, you want to make sure you're spelling that correctly. And here, so it looks like just it was an accident or something. I'm sure that's what happened. And then you want to fade it off screen. This looks good. Maybe give a little bit of space in between these two right here and then bring them up just a tiny bit so that it's a little bit closer to your name. It's not such a big gap here. Other than that, this looks great. And motion blur. And you could honestly put your whole name in caps. I think your name in like all capitals would look a little bit nicer there too. Ah, interesting. Like you got scale happening. If you're going to do the scale, because it looks like you don't want to scale the type in two separate directions at the same time. So like what's happening is you have the Y scale and the X scale separated. And you definitely want to make sure that it's just one or the other and not separate when it comes to type. But this kind of looks cool. It's almost like a little wave that's happening here. Just some motion blur on that. Maybe make sure that this area right here has a little bit more space. So maybe you want to thicken this bar, this orange bar up a little bit, to make sure that there's an even space right here at the top and at the bottom right there. And then I would bold your name or make it all capital. And that looks really good. Cool. Good job. Really good job, Jesus. Nice. All right. Karen, let's go ahead and look at this for you, Karen. Oh, let me zoom out here. Okay, first of all, when I zoom out, it looks like your video is in 30 frames a second. So you want to make sure right here, it's at 30 frames a second. So you want to make sure that you're exporting at 24 frames a second. Also, it looks like the size of your composition is incorrect. So if you make it 1920 by 1080, then you'll be fine. You might have accidentally just hit the wrong render settings when you went to render it out, and that's the reason that it's doing that. Let me see here. Hide this. There we go. All right, and then we have a problem where the text looks, I don't know if it's the color against the background because they're almost the same saturation, and this is slightly like, I'm gonna say it's kind of like a taupe, but it's got like an orangey hue to it. And sometimes when we put complementary colors that are very similar in saturation next to each other, it makes the word look like, it makes the colors look like they vibrate, right? Or like our moving, or it's just like a trick that the eye does to try and differentiate the colors from each other. And so I can't tell if it's blurry, or I can't tell if that's the issue. So you're going to want to address that in some way. If you need help with that, just let me know. As far as the animation goes, when I play it, nice. They come in, they settle very nicely in here. And then they move off screen really well. You just want to add motion blur onto that. Nice. Good job on this. Just adding motion blur. And then also you're going to want to change the size of the font of the sentences. Make them a little bit smaller, and then make sure they line up at the top and the bottom here, right? So you're going to want to just make these a little smaller, and you'll be set on that. Add the motion blur, and then make sure that they fade off screen, which they don't, so you want to make sure. Right here, not a bad start. You want to make sure that your email comes in first and not at the same time as your name, because what's happening here is your name and your email are crossing over each other, and you never want text to cross over each other like that. So email first goes down, then your name goes down. As far as like typography goes, it looks good. You can add an extra, like maybe fake information down here or something for a website, and then adding motion blur on here as well. And then we are just missing the fourth scene, which is one in your own style. So you'll want to make those changes to these three, and then also have the other one in there, and then you will be all set to go. Good start. All right, hold on 1 second. I want to get this one done too. All right, Sam's. Let's look at this. All right, coming in a little slow off the bat, and then the easing at the end here. We have, first of all, like a blank frame that happens in between this scene and this one. So you want to make sure, like I was saying earlier, if you got two comps down here, right, you want to take one, you'll drag it and hold shift, and it will snap at the end of the comp, either below or above it. So you want to make sure that you're doing that when you're moving your pre-comps around, and that way they'll butt up next to each other, and you won't have any empty frames in between, which is the reason that it gave that black bar. The other thing that you want to do is you do want to adjust the easing on the way in, like maybe bring the words a little bit further off the screen here. And then you want to make sure your curves are matching the curves that I did. And the other thing here is that we have an alignment issue. They all need to be aligned in the same spot. So you want to hit Control R to bring up these, to bring up the rulers. And then you want to click and drag one of the rulers over here. You can barely see it, but it's right there. And you want to line these up with that, right? So make sure all your text is aligned with that. And then when I play on the way out, this looks good. The animation on the way out looks good. You just need to make sure the animation on the way in is very similar. The word fade, nice, not bad. We want to give a little bit of room, so we want to make sure spacing is kind of similar all on this area here. So make a little bit of room here. Maybe bring this A over to the left a little bit, the D over to the left a little bit, and maybe the A could kind of end up here, and the D, and then you'll want the D to like kind of fit in between the E and the A. You can also bring this E over slightly too. I would bring all three of them over a little bit. The F looks good. The other thing you want to do is make sure that the sentences are aligned as well at the top to the letters of the word fade. So you'll just want to bring this sentence up and this sentence down, and you maybe want to make sure that they're on the same, like there's two, the animations look good. Again, alignment issue right here. You want to make sure that the sentences are aligned. And maybe this can be 2 lines, so you can hit enter to have a break, or make these sentences a little bit bigger so they kind of fill in the space a little bit more. Add a little motion blur onto everything. Make sure all of this fades off and doesn't just disappear like that, and then you'll be good. All right, good start on this, Sam. I would add motion blur and then give a, oh, you did it on that one. That one looks good. And then just maybe make sure there's a little bit of extra room in between these, right? If you do that, then you'll be all set on that. And just adding the motion blur. This one looks good. And then this one looks cool too. Nice. Yeah, again, same thing. Adding a little bit of space in between those letters there. Maybe making your name could be more bold and stand out a little bit more from this writing here. And maybe mess around, now that you know stuff about shapes, mess around with the shapes. And you can, and you'll be able to like do something a little bit more interesting than just having the position things on there. But good start. All right, let's see here. Oh, let me open this. Ilmaz. Let me know how to pronounce your name if I'm butchering it. Let's go ahead and play this one. All right, the word fade. We've just got one scene here, so you're going to need the rest of the scenes. Obviously, we have 3 more that need to be done in here. And this fades on. It fades on nicely. Moves over good. Really, the only thing, this is correct. The things that I would do is I would maybe move the A, D, and E over slightly, right? The E, you still want to be cut off a little bit, but maybe the A and the D can move a little bit more, and you'll just make sure the spacing is similar. And then you want to make sure that the typography sentences are lined with the top and the bottom of the word fade here. So again, hit Control R on your keyboard, click and drag a guide line down here, and then you can line up the sentence there. Add a little bit of motion blur and you'll be all set. Good job fading that off screen. I would have loved to see the other ones because you did a good job on that. So if you have them, I can look at them and adjust your grade. Let's see here. All right, Julia, let's go ahead and look at yours right here. Good job on that, Julia. Yeah, those look good. You just need to add motion blur, really. And then also the text, you need to work a little bit more on the boldness of the text, right? So this one's, I can see the difference in the line weight, but I think that it could be a little bit more, if there's the option, to have a little bit more of a bold text happening here and a thinner text happening here. And then you need to add motion blur onto these. Other than that, good start. So faded, you want it to just say fade, so you're going to want to get rid of that D right here at the end. And you want to make sure that these either move off and part of it is off screen, not all of it. Same with the E. Or you want to make sure that you're staying within the title action safe rules. So if I turn on the title action safe right there, you can see that these kind of boxes show up, and let me remove this guideline here. And there's this line right here that you can line that F up with, and the E up with. Let me zoom in a little bit here. And so you're going to want to do that. And the other thing that you're going to want to do, if I drag a guideline back down here, is you're going to want to make sure that the sentence for your typography is in line with the top and the bottom of the word fade, right? So you're going to want to bring this one up and this one down so that they rest in that space. The other thing I think you want to add is motion blur onto here. Nice job fading it off screen. This looks great. You just want to really, what I would do here, add motion blur. And then your name, you're going to want to make it bolder, right? It's not bold enough. So maybe just either all caps in a bolder font or just a bigger bolder font with that, and then just adding the motion blur, and I think you'll be set on that one. Nice. Cool. Good job on this one. Now that you know a little bit more about, maybe you should mess around with the easings of some of the like information that you have on here to see um, like what you can come up with that looks a little bit more interesting, and then adding motion blur, and then also doing the same thing with your name, making it a little bit more bold there so it stands out a little bit. But other than that, really good start on this. Minimal changes really, and I'm excited to see what you come up with. Good job. All right, next here we have Marissa. Okay, let's play this. Oops, right here. There we go. Let's play. All right, good start on this. So obviously with the fade, I've been seeing this a lot with the issues with the things, is you want to make sure that the sentences line up with the top and bottom of the word fade. So what I would do here is the word is slightly smaller. So I would maybe increase the size of the letters of the word fade, and then also just bring these down a little bit. And you might have to adjust the size of the sentences as well, so that they're all in line here, right? And not to that there's enough space like you have in between here, because the space that you have in between is great. But you just might want to make these a little bit smaller, make this a little bit bigger, so it just kind of fills up the screen a little bit more. As far as animation goes, let's see back. Let's zoom back here. Perfect as far as like the ones that you have on there. You want to make sure that it fades off screen and just doesn't switch to the next scene. And the other thing, motion blur, you want to add on this. And these ones kind of move. They're a little bit too staggered, so you want to make sure they're kind of moving around the same time. And then you want to make sure there's enough space in between, the same space in between each of these when they settle. So you might want to move the A and the D over to the left a little bit more and give them a little more breathing room there. Other than that, good start, because there's a lot of negative space in this area right here that we want to address. We want to kind of fill that up because there's already a lot at the top. The good, better, best. Not bad. I think the easing could be worked on. You're going to want to, the easing for these is the same. We want it to, the easing should be different for each one of these. You should have good easing on this one, better easing on this one, and the best easing on this one. So you're going to want to re-watch this section and make sure you're paying attention to the animation curves. Also, you want to make sure that the space in between these is the same. If I play this, you also need to add the motion blur onto here as well. And then it needs to animate off screen with that easing is on there as well. And motion blur, add the motion blur. Same with this one. It's a little slow, so you want to speed up the animation. Also adding the motion blur and making sure that the space in between each one of these lines is the same. Because right now the space between your website name and your user YouTube name or whatnot is not equal. Same with this one. Do the same here. This looks neat. You could speed. Ooh, cool. Ooh, nice. Looking good there. Speed the animation up a little bit. Add motion blur. You can make your name a little bit bigger here, which would be cool. But this is nice. I'm happy that you played around with this one. The way your name animates on screen, you can maybe offset this a little bit so that your name Marissa comes in first, and then this one's coming in kind of offset from this one. And once you adjust the speed on this, I think it'll look awesome. The flashing is because of my GPU. It's not from your thing. But yeah, cool work on that. Good job. Good start on this. I'm excited to see the changes that you make. All right. Next is Ezra. Let's look at yours, Ezra. Nice. Good job on the animation curves there. Oh, nice. The animation curves look great. You just need to add some motion blur. Everything lines up. Type looks good. Animation looks good. Beautiful. This is perfect. You could even move the sentences here, minimal changes, right? I would just add some motion blur and take these two sentences and move them just slightly over there to fill this kind of spacing because we have like a big negative space there. Or what you can do is move the A and the D over slightly to kind of fill that. So you might just need to do a little bit adjusting, but other than that, this looks really good. It fades off screen perfectly. Nice, really good job. Strong start here, Ezra. Yeah, nice. Great job on this. Add some motion blur in there and that'll be all set. Also, your name, you can make it bigger. So either a heavier font weight or make the size a little bit bigger to stand out a little bit more. But I would like to see it bolded, I think, a little bit more. I think that would look cool. And then just giving the motion blur onto that. Neat. So this one, what you're getting is a line here, and then also there is a line, there's like a spot here where it doesn't fully line up. So you might want to make sure that there's, I don't know if you're using two separate solids, but make sure this one here goes under the other one so you don't really see that line. And then make sure that it stretches across the end there, adding motion blur onto this as well. And I think you'll be all set. But that's cool. Neat. You could even change the color here if you want it to stand out. But good start on this, Ezra. Really good start. Solid start. Very minimal changes as well. All right. Jimmy. Let's look at yours, Jimmy. All right, not bad. We have a little bit of overshoot happening. I'll dress that, but you've got the motion blur on. Looks good. The animations are good. Ooh, nice. That looks great. The overshoot here is when they move past their normal like keyframe and then they settle in. So what that looks like, if I were to draw it, your keyframe's here. You've got another, like thinking of your graph editor, right? You get another keyframe here. The overshoot occurs when the curve goes above or below the keyframe. When it's above like this, right there, and below the keyframe like this right here, that's where the overshoot happens. So the animation goes past where it needs to settle and then settles in. Right now we don't want the overshoot, so you'll just want to make sure that the curve looks more like this and that it lines up with it so that it's in alignment with the keyframe there. Other than that, that's really all I would adjust on there. Maybe bringing the word good up slightly so that there's equal space in between the three of them. Nice. This one looks good. The only thing I would do here is maybe make the sentences a smaller font size, just by a little bit, so that we get a little bit more space in between the sentences there, and that way you can line them up with the word fade as well. So if I hit Control R on my keypad and bring up the rulers, I can drag this down. It's literally the same color, but you can kind of see the ruler right there, and then you'll want to make sure that this sentence and this sentence line up with the top of the word fade and the bottom of the word fade, and then add motion blur if you can on it. But other than that, the distance between these looks great. And then you just want to fade that off screen. This looks good too, not bad. I would give a little bit of extra room right up here. Well, right here, right between these, your information here and your name and this line. So maybe just bring all of this down a little bit further here. And then you could even make your name like full. I see there's a shadow behind it, which is okay for this because of the saturation of both colors are kind of high. So I would try and match that red up to this red right here, because this red is like a darker color and this one's really bright and vibrant, kind of like the one of the marker thing that I'm using on the screen. So I would try and match your name color up to this one, then just move these down, add motion blur, and maybe you can adjust maybe this is all caps like your name there. Other than that, really good start on that one. Let's see your next one. Nice. Yeah, not too bad. You could do something a little bit more creative here now that you further in the class. But same things, right? Making sure that there's a little bit more space here. Drop these down a little bit, add the motion blur, and maybe you can make your name in all caps here. But really, really good start. I'm impressed with the start. All right. Next. Let me see here. I think we saw this one, Sam. Yeah, okay, we saw that one. I'll delete that. All right, here we have Shyla. Let's go ahead and play this, Shyla. Not bad. Need to add some motion blur onto that. Good job. Really good job with the animation on that. I wouldn't have any changes, just the motion blur. That's all that I would add on that one. Yeah, really good job on that. Nice. This is beautiful. This is perfect. I don't have any changes on this. You followed this perfectly, Shyla. I'm very impressed. I think the first person to do so without any changes. Just the only thing that should happen is it should fade out. Yep, beautiful. Okay, here is just where you're going to want to make a change. Your first change is going to come here. Making sure that this black bar is like maybe fully off screen and then animates on screen. And then you just want to add the motion blur onto this, to your type as well. And then as well onto the solid layer there. Other than that, this looks really good. Nice. Good job. Ooh, cool. Put the animator, illustrator, designer on here. I like that. I think you should put your full name here and not just the S. I think the full name will look nice. And then you could make you can make your name a little bit bigger so it stands out a little bit more, right? And so then you would want to make this little bar a little bit bigger. Also adding motion blur on here. And then I would actually keep the animator, illustrator, designer the same font weight. In fact, you could even make this one a little bit more bold compared to this one, or make these a little bit smaller. But I like that. I like that you added that text on there. And now that you know a little bit more about like the class and animating, maybe you could add, some more fun things to it. But really solid start. Really, it was just these two contact information things that you needed to make changes on, and very minimal changes. So really good job. Impressive. Bow. Let's see, bows. Nice. Ooh, good job, Bo. Motion blur on there looks good. We've got a little bit of movement happening. This is what I'm seeing. So in between this last keyframe where it settles, and you can see the word good kind of moving around a little bit, and then the keyframe to where it starts to move off screen, just make sure that the curve in that spot is completely flat, and also make sure there's no additional keyframes there. What it could be is the easing between the last keyframe and the first keyframe of when the type settles and then when it moves off screen. Those two keyframes, when you went to ease them, there might have been like some weird thing that kind of happened. So you might want to go in and ease them one at a time, or select them both, make them linear keyframes, and then ease them both together so you don't get that motion. But you can check your curve to see if that's an issue or if you have any additional keyframes. But the really good job on the easing, really good job on the motion blur. This looks perfect. Beautiful. Nailed it. No changes on that. Really, really good job on that fade one, Bo. Great job on this. Only a couple things I would change. Add motion blur all together, and then just a little bit of extra space in between these, and you'll be all set on that one. In fact, you could probably make your name just slightly bigger. And if you want to do all capitals, that might be a little bit better too, which you could do. Just to make it stand out a little bit more. This looks nice. Yeah, cool. Really cool work on there. Motion blur. That's all I would add. And maybe you want to match this color up to like the brown. So the color of your text could be the brown color, here, and it looks a little bit more cohesive. Let me see this one too. I think, yeah, that's what I would do. Is just make this text down here the brown, and then that wouldn't be bad. And then offset these ones, these animations. So like this one comes in first, this one, and then this one. So they're not all coming in at the same time. Maybe mess around with the easing now that you know a little bit more about the easing and stuff. Or maybe do something a little bit more creative on this one now that you have more tools under your tool belt. But really, really strong start on this bow. Really great job. All right, Lily, let's go ahead and look at yours. Nice. That looked good. I think just motion blur we need to add on it. Beautiful. Yeah, great animation. Just adding the motion blur on that one is all I would do. Beautiful. Perfect. Motion blur, add to this. That's all I would do as well. And this looks great. That looks beautiful. Adding motion blur is the only thing I think I'm missing throughout the video. Neat. Cool. So this one, what I would do differently is I would offset the keyframes on these animating on screen. So this comes in first, this comes in halfway once this one's halfway done, and this starts coming in once this one's halfway done animating on screen. And I think it would look a little bit more interesting. And adding motion blur, obviously, to all of them is a benefit. And then this part, it animates down and then animates up. That's cool. Yeah, adding motion blur into those too. Really solid start on here. Minimal changes. Really good job following along the lesson in class, and I look forward to seeing the changes that you make. Good job. All right, here we have Alexis. Let's go ahead and move this back. Let's watch yours. Nice. A little bit of overshoot on here. I love this font that you used. Let's watch this again. The easing looks good, and you got the motion blur on there. Happy, yay. Nice. It looks so good with the motion blur. So the only thing that I'm seeing here is that the words kind of overshoot. Best and good do this. So what's happening is you have a keyframe here. If we're looking at your graph editor, you have a keyframe here, right? And you want to make sure that that curve doesn't go above the first keyframe or below the last keyframe, because this right here, when it doesn't line up with the keyframe, is overshoot. And this is overshooting as well. And so what happens is the text will move past the position that it settles in and then moves into that settling position. And we want the curve to kind of go like this. There we go. So that the keyframes and the curve are at the same spot there. But really, really good start. That's a minimal change. It's just adjusting the curves on the word good and best. Fade looks great. Overall, just a couple changes that I would make. Maybe make the type a little bit smaller so we have a little bit more space in between here. And then shuffle the D and the A over a little bit so that it fills in this negative space a little bit more here. We have a little bit more space in between these letters. And I think that would look really cool. Also adding a little motion blur onto this as well would be beneficial onto the word fade. That looks good the way it fades off screen. Beautiful on that. You can, couple things I would do, add motion blur again. Also make this bigger, your name, so you can make it all caps and then increase the font size, and then just give us a little bit more space in between these. Other than that, that looks good as far as the animation goes. This, I love this. I love it. I'm so excited. Yay. Oh my gosh, where'd it go? Now I need to go back. Sorry. I got excited about this because this is the most creative one I've seen this semester. Yay! Okay, let's go through it one at a time when we get here. So, I'm Alexis Sayers. Nice to meet you. I think this is awesome. I love the motion blur on it. I think that we could overlap some of, like, a couple changes that we can make to this. The first thing I see is that this needs to all line up together, right? So you want to bring all of these over so that they all line up, and then maybe bring this up a little bit more so there's a little bit more space in between, and maybe make this information a little bit smaller in font size. As far as like the animation on screen goes, it's got the motion blur, which great. You're offsetting that. That looks awesome. This nice to meet you is so cool. You can maybe slow it down a little bit, or what would be neat is because when we look at it here, right there, there's a couple things that happen. One thing that happens is the type kind of crosses itself when it curves over, and it does it here a little bit further on in the animation. So what you can do is you can increase the kerning in the type. So if I go to character here and we look over at the size, you're going to want to change the, I think it's this one right here where it says VA, this one. You can change that so there's a little bit more space in between the letters. And if not that one, then it is that one. It's this one right here. So you want to adjust that so there's a little bit more space in between the letters, and maybe slow this animation down a bit. And then this circle, the sun spot thing, really cool. I think that can start to animate once this bar crosses over. So you can just kind of not start animating it right here, start animating it up right around there. And maybe it rotates or something neat. But it can stay on screen. It doesn't have to zoom off screen. Neat, but doesn't need it. And then maybe just making sure there's a slight bit of room here. So I'm excited because you gave me a lot to look at, but when you do give more, there's more things that can be changed on here. But I believe that you have the tools and stuff to do that, and I'm very excited at what I saw, and I love it. But yeah, I think that would be really neat. And maybe like here where maybe you change the position of this to kind of see right here where it kind of meets over to. So maybe you just have to change the shape of the path a little bit, and maybe this is right here and the text goes kind of up and over this as it's rotating, right? That would be cool because this could move up kind of centered right here, and I think that would be neat. And maybe the text comes up here and then kind of goes down below the rotating star shape, sun shape. But yeah, really, really cool. Awesome work. Awesome job. Very proud of yourself. You should be. Cool. Great job, class. I'm very excited at what everyone did, and I'm excited to see everyone's changes. Very, very cool. Very cool stuff. Nice. I will be back the next one that I grade. I'll be grading it like this as well with a stream. So, all right.